very much. Item 13 is the Chief Executive's employment review process, and we have Patricia Reid. Now, councillors, I understand that, or I know that a big part of this is going to be in confidential. Having discussions, we believe there's a large part that we can actually bring forward into the open agenda, with your permission, with the exclusion of perhaps talking about our CE's performance levels directly, but there's large pieces of this work we can do in open session, which should be adding to the transparency of our work.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Do I have a seconder?
A second.
Seconded. So we're bringing these, what is confidential now, into the open agenda. Any questions or queries? Statements? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? It's carried. Patricia, in your hands. Thank you, Andani.
Great. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. So the purpose of this agenda item is to advise you, the governing body, of your legislative responsibilities in relation to the expiry of the Chief Executive's contract. So this year, the governing body needs to decide if it wishes to extend the Chief Executive's contract. Stephen was appointed in January of 2014, and his 5-year contract is due to expire at the 31st of December of this year. Under the Local Government Act, the Council can extend Stephen's contract by up to a further 2 years without the need to advertise a vacancy. If you choose this option, it's a requirement that you conduct an employment review not less than 6 months before the CE contract expires. So this would mean that the review would need to be completed by the 30th of June this year. The employment review will consist of both a performance review and a forward-looking part, which is an assessment of the mix of skills and attributes possessed by the Chief Executive and the degree to which they are consistent with the skills and attributes required for the Council to fulfil what it needs to deliver in the next 2 years, and any other factors that you consider relevant. So ultimately, it is the governing body's decision whether to extend the CE's contract, and that's because the governing body is the employer of the Chief Executive. But from a practical perspective, it would make sense for the APR-VFM committee to undertake the employment review. The APR-VFM terms of reference does not at this point include the delegated authority to conduct an employment review. It has the authority to conduct a performance review only. The APR-VFM requests that its terms of reference be changed at this meeting in order to enable the APR-VFM to also conduct the employment review. If you approve this, it would give the APR-VFM 2 full meetings to complete the review before the 30th of June of this year. So the 2 meetings are to be held on the 3rd of May and on the 7th of June. And then the governing body would receive recommendations for your meeting in late June. And obviously, from the CE's perspective and from the perspective of major stakeholders and staff, the sooner the decision can be made, the better. The Local Government Act doesn't provide guidance on how the review should be conducted. It's up to the Council to determine the breadth and the detail required. But as a recommendation, we suggest that we manage this in 2 parts. So the first part being the performance review. And that's not just of the last 12 months, but of the previous 4.5 years. So it will cover the full employment period. The second part is an assessment of the skills and attributes required for the future. So that's to test that you have considered your future needs in relation to what the CE needs to deliver. And it's only for the period of the contract extension, so i.e. for no more than 2 years. It should focus on the highest priorities and only those that can be influenced by the CE over the 2-year period. So some examples of that could include value for money reviews, the implementation of the LTP, America's Cup planning, ATAP, CRL, light rail, APEC planning, further organisational transformation, cost control within the organisation, local body elections, and so on. So what would happen next? So what we're doing today is informing you of your formal responsibilities as the employer of the Chief Executive. Then we will, in a minute, recommend to you that we change the terms of reference to enable the APR VFM to undertake the employment review. All councillors have been invited to participate in the employment process. This has happened in the past and has happened for this review process as well. In addition to that, with a focus on the further 2 years, councillors will be invited by Peter Kerridge, well, you'll receive a letter from me, for a meeting one-on-one, should you choose it, with Peter Kerridge of Kerridge and Associates to talk about what you see are the most important skills and attributes required for the following 2 years. So the next step after today would be the APR VFM on the 3rd of May. So this will focus, as I said, on the performance review of the last 12 months and of the entire performance period of 4.5 years. You've all been invited to participate in that, should you wish. Local board chairs have also been invited to provide their feedback, should they wish to. And we have begun the process of seeking stakeholder feedback from representatives from the IMSB, central government, CCOs, and from business. So that's for the APR VFM on the 3rd of May. The next step in the process is the APR VFM on the 7th of June, and that's where we'll focus on the skills and attributes for the future. And then the committee will conclude its employment review in consultation with the Chief Executive. And then the final step in the process is a governing body meeting on the 28th of June, where you will receive advice from the APR VFM committee, and you'll be asked to make a decision in relation to the contract extension option. So that's what we propose, councillors, and having had the conversation about bringing the recommendations that are in the confidential paper to here, is now the time for us to go through that, or welcome to have questions.
Dani, got anything you wish to add? Not this time.
Not at this time.
So essentially, councillors, this is a process, a recommendation about how we step through this work, whether we want to appointing a CE for another term. Is there anything, Patricia, that's specifically excluded from that performance review that we need to know about? Like HR? No?
No?
No, okay, everything's in then?
Yes, so we will provide all of the information that's required in terms of what the expectations were when Stephen was appointed, and then documentation. There have been 11 review points ever since his appointment, so we will provide the APR VFM committee with all of that information. And then the proposal is that when we come back to the governing body on the 28th of June, we will summarise the performance story for that meeting.
All right, thank you. So, councillors, these are questions about the performance of this process, how it's going to work, and not about what the Chief Executive's performance has been. Okay. Councillors, we have Cooper, please. Councillor Cooper.
And my question is, those two committee meetings, will they be in confidence? And the reason I ask that is natural justice, because I think any employee should not have a publicly played out. I mean, if we want the results to go out, that's fine, negotiated, but actually I don't believe that that is fair and right to play that out in a public arena.
Absolutely, you're right, Councillor. Thank you for that. So in relation to both the Privacy Act and the Employment Relations Act, it would be conducted in confidence.
Thank you.
Councillor Casey.
I'm just a little bit confused about what we're doing today. I thought that the committee had delegated authority. Are you saying it's come back to us for a decision today? And if so, where is that decision up there? Because I don't see it.
So the committee, this is asking for the committee to have authority to conduct the employment review.
No, I understand that, Patricia. The question is to extend the Chief
delegation.
Executive's contract. I thought it was delegated to that committee. Are you saying it's
No,
not? and
no,
back
it's
here?
not.
So which one of those relates to that? Because I can't find it. Because C is about agreeing. That's just agreeing that they've got delegated authority.
Scroll up, Sandra. Because we're changing the terms of
Yeah,
reference
so
so
it's
they can.
C. It's recommendation C.
Well, I read that, but it doesn't say that. Can you
E.
just, that's what I thought it was. Oh, there's more.
D.
Okay, so the additional piece is there
D
under
is-
additional delegation. So at the moment, now we believe that the spirit of the intent of the terms of reference for the APR VFM committee was to include all aspects of the chief executive's employment. But legal advice is that it's very clear that it covers currently the performance review aspect, but not clear enough that it also covers the employment review piece.
With respect, I'm just looking for the recommendation that deals with the extension to the chief executive's contract.
It's
Which-
F.
Which- F.
If you read F,
Note that the governing body alone.
it's got to be a governing
Oh,
body.
so we're not making the decision today?
No.
Oh,
no.
Sorry, that's what that's
It's just a
question.
process.
Oh, no.
I was wondering where you're coming from, councillor. Okay, I get it. Okay, thank you. Where are we up to?
Enough decisions for one day.
William Piner.
Thank you, Chair. Can we go up to A, please? So there's a choice that we have in A. We can either publicly advertise a vacancy, extend the incumbent chief executive's contract by up to further 2 years. That's the choice we have, according to A. Am I correct?
Yes.
So if we choose that it gets publicly advertised as a vacancy, we will not be going through a review process.
You have to do the review.
You have to do
It's just a
an
note.
employment review at the end of the 5-year term.
Right. So,
Anyway.
so this review process that we're going through now is based on the further 2 years that we have to decide. So, I mean, I understand where Kathy's coming from, because I think we need to be explicit in regards to where we're heading with this, because they've given us a choice in A.
Yeah.
And the choice is, do we advertise as an A? Do we publicly advertise a vacancy, extend the incumbent chief executive contract by up to further 2 years? That's the second choice, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's noting that we
So
have
it's
that
either
choice.
or.
What's it? Yeah. yeah.
Noting that we have that choice.
So we have the choice, and so who makes the decision as to which choice we will be making?
The governing body
Governing
will
body.
make a decision based on a recommendation
From the-
from the
Yep,
APR VFM
yep, from
committee.
the APR VFM.
Yeah.
And have the APR VFM made a decision in regards to advertise or 2 years extension? I know that the chief executive, no, nobody has.
No,
So that's my whole point.
Right.
With the question, is that a decision needs to be made as to which direction we have to go.
No.
No?
So, no.
That's what I'm asking.
No, so the chief executive's contract is currently for 5 years.
Yes?
There has to be an employment review at that point. So we will review, the APR VFM committee will review the performance of the chief executive on May the 3rd. The second piece is on June the 7th, where they will consider the skills and attributes held by the chief executive and the requirements of the role for the following 2 years, and then they will make a recommendation.
Sorry, Patricia, so I just need to, I want to get it clear in my head. 2014, chief executive employed. 2019 is the expiry of his 5 years.
December 2018. Yeah.
Okay, 2018, it's the expiry of his 5-year contract.
This year.
Yep. So who then makes the decision as to which pathway we take?
You do.
We do, that's what I'm saying, but where is the decision-making
But you don't have all of the information at this
make that
point
decision
yet.
in
Make that
order to
decision.
make that decision.
The review.
So what I'm saying is that I want to say, yes, I want to go the further 2 years as requested.
You can't yet.
So we can't. That's what
No,
I'm...
you can't. You
Not
need to
today.
review the
Can, but
performance.
not now.
What,
Have to do it with a performance
So-
review.
Can I
I
talk?
know I know there's a performance review. I get that.
You have to have that first.
But once we have and is this performance review based on his 5 years?
4.5 at that point.
Yeah, 4.5? So that's based. Then a decision will come to us in June 28.
Yes.
And we will make that decision as to whether it is advertised or whether we go with the 2 further years without advertising a vacancy.
That's right.
Is that the decision making?
right.
That's all I
That's
wanted
right.
to find out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So it's the 28th of June is when a decision is made by the governing body. That didn't sort of explain, even with A, didn't really explain it well, but at least I've got to it.
the flow
Oh,
chart is, we're setting up the process now, we get the information
Yep.
between now and 28th of June, and then we make a decision on that date.
Right, and
Okay, with
yeah,
some
because we have to make it before the end of December.
Well, yes, you have to make it by the end of June because,
Yeah, yeah.
I won't do
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it
because
it
of the
requires
advertising.
at
Yeah.
least 6 months.
So 28th of June is the decision as to which option we take. Yeah.
That's very clear, isn't
And
it?
it's an
Yes,
informed,
clear now.
sort of formed decision because we've done the review by then, you see?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. I just want to raise what may be a related issue, Mr Chair, and I don't know whether this process can allow for it. It may be because of the structure of council and the CCOs and the chief executive's role as it goes to the CCOs that there are issues around the chief executive being able to perform and perhaps some changes that might need to be made. Is it possible for this process to bring some of those things out? And if I just speak to that a little bit further, we know that there are significant problems around issues that involve multiple CCOs and the council, and issues where a particular CCO might not take something into consideration, and we may end up with a suboptimal decision. And this is obviously an area where there's an expectation that the chief executive is over the top of everything and reporting to us.
I would
So just
presume
put
it's
that
probably enabled by the review process, but I'll refer to Patricia.
Yes, and in particular, the APR VFM committee on the 7th of June, which is more forward-looking, is an opportunity to talk about the requirements of the role for the future. And something like that, Councillor, could be part of that discussion and could be raised as, you know, if that's what came out of the conversation, as something that needs to be addressed into the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Good question. Councillor Watson.
Thanks. Relatively minor one, just in terms of the local board input into this, or feedback, I should say. Is it the local board chairs, or is it the local boards per se?
So a letter has gone out from Phil Wilson to local board chairs, and they have also been invited to speak to their local board members and provide the feedback on their behalf. But the request for direct feedback is with the chairs.
Okay, so as in other instances, I think it's important to make it clear that it's the local boards as a whole, because the local board chair is just one person, and you know, may or may not reflect the view of the local board. So I don't know what can be done here other than to make it clear to the local board chairs the expectation is that they're reporting back on
Yes.
their boards, not just their view.
Thank you, Councillor, and the letter does make that very clear. And we have done this exact same process for previous employment, for performance reviews.
Councillor Disney Simpson.
Oh, it wasn't a question. I'm happy just to speak for the recommendation, but just to back up Patricia's comments, we brought that up in the APA, the committee, that absolutely the chief executive was the local board's chief executive as well, and so it was a full.
Are there any other questions before we go to open debate? If If not, Councillor Simpson, first off.
Well, I think we've covered it, and I do think one of the trouble here is that you don't get all the recommendations in one go. You have to keep scrolling up and down. But I think Councillor Filipaina was basically asking a question because he couldn't see the whole run through. But the process is there. I think I'm a process person. I think the process is very fair, and ultimately it will come back to the governing body for a decision. And I think it's a good thing to do. I support it. I've moved it, obviously.
Thank you. Do we have a second to it, Sandra?
Yep.
Yep. Any other debate tools? No. If not, it's been moved and seconded. I will put the recommendations as per your screen. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? It's carried. Thank you, Councillor Lee. Thank you. It's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, councillors, for letting us bring the confidential item forward. I think the transparency is most worthwhile in this instance.
Having said that, we'll just go into confidential.
Item 18 is a summary of governing body information memos and briefings.
I'll move.
Moved, seconded.
Yep.
Thank you. Questions? No questions? All right. I'll move the recommendations. A, that we receive the summary of the governing body information memos and briefings. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. We move to exclude the public.
Also move.
Seconded by Councillor Collins. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried.